you shoot on a lot of different cameras, like a lot of different cameras. So as someone who does shoot on a lot of different cameras, when you heard the news about this new Fuji, I'm going to just call it a cinema camera for the rest of the show. Can I do that?
Is that a marketing move? Like, we're not going to call it a cinema camera because we want people to just like buzz, or do they actually creating a whole new classification of cameras?
I'm not sure. I think that might be
okay.
But Joshua, as somebody who does shoot on a lot of different cameras, what was your initial thought when this camera initially just got when they dropped the news about it?
Yeah, to be honest, like when I also excuse my voice, my kids had a cold. Now I'm getting their cold right now, so I sound kind of nasally. But my initial thought when I first saw the renders, I thought it was an AI generated camera at first, and I thought it was a prank, to be honest. I'm like, what is happening right now? Because I started getting a ton of messages saying, "Hey, the Fujifilm announced the camera," and then I saw it on their website, official website, and I'm like, "Oh shoot, they actually did it, or they're doing it." So
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's really nuts because I mean, I think most people out there would probably be like, I think it's safe to say that Fuji definitely has unique colors and aspirational colors. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like,
would you say like going towards film, like trying to emulate film? Because that's why my friend loves Fuji.
Well, I would say,
going
what
after
would you
that.
say?
well, I would like to
film
say,
film.
well, Fujifilm is currently the only camera manufacturer that's produced film, like actual film.
Yeah.
So they're they're testing for digital prints for film, or more accurate than any other company that's doing it out there. Maybe Ari, but like Fujifilm's pretty much the leader in doing that. Canon doesn't produce film. Didn't produce film in the past either. Nikon, Sony, none of the other companies have done it. So Fujifilm colors are closest to film in my opinion. And that's not being biased. That's just like because they do it. They actually do it.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think that's. I mean, they do have that. They do have that information already dialed in from the past.
Yeah.
But I think another thing that a lot of people really love about the Fuji system is just like how you can get those colors baked in. Because I think a lot of times when we think about our favorite cameras, whether that's Sony, even Red, Nikon, most of us are considering shooting in log, right? I think Fuji is one of those few camera brands where people will be like, oh, I'll just take the camera I'll take the color, straight out of camera. And then I'm going to get that image. Now, real quick.
And so,
oh, go ahead.
Yeah. I was going to say that that whole straight out of camera kind of movement that Fujifilm pushes is really for the photography side of things. The JPEGs and the Fuji cameras are amazing, and they still have a lot of latitude, even though you have a baked-in image. So now, when that translates to video, to be honest, I have not really toyed around with the idea of baking in my image. That's very risky in a lot of different scenarios.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that that's what they're kind of still pushing, is baking in your image. I can see it from our content creation, fast turnarounds, and you have that certain workflow, but having log is still going to be important moving forward.
Yeah, and I think
Man, that sounds terrible.
No, you're good, bro. I think that's one of the things that when we look at the Fuji entering into the filmmaking game, that's what I'm going to call it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what else to call it at this point. One of the first things that makes me excited is like, how are they going to tackle the image processing that we're looking for in the world of video? Because I will say, in the world of photography, I think Fuji has been solid. Yeah. Especially in colors. We know that they have like all the different looks. Like everybody and their mom pretty much picked up a Fuji X106, like because they wanted to take photos with it and pull those stills directly out. But I'm really interested with this new camera as to like what they want to do in video. Now we know because of an interview from Cindy D that the new Fuji, what's the actual name of
GFX?
it? No, not the GFX. What's the name of the filmmaking?
The Eterna, GFX Eterna.
The GFX Eterna. So we know that the GFX Eterna because of this interview, is very similar
Mhm.
to the 100X2.
Mhm.
And all right, today's episode is get out of the way. Today's episode is sponsored by
Sure.
Yes. They reached out and asked could they sponsor an episode of the podcast.
And we said sure.
Yes. But that's because we actually use their products every single week.
Yeah, we use the SM7B.
Yep, and I actually use the SM7DB, and I have a set of their in-ears that I use to monitor our audio every week.
But they don't just make podcasting mics.
They don't. They actually make stuff for freelance videographers and filmmakers as well, like their new Move Mic 2s.
Yeah, what are some of those features, Brandon?
Yeah, so the Move Mic 2s start off being very small, lightweight, and compact, which is great when you need to just add it to your filmmaking kit. But these mics also can do dual channel recording, not only to your camera, but also to your phone and even through Bluetooth. And everybody loves the fact that they have great battery life.
Now, one of the things that I care about the most is how long that battery life lasts. What is it?
So it's actually 24 hours. So the way it works is that the lavalier mics will actually last for 8 hours, and then you can put them back into their charging case, and you can actually go through that cycle 3 times, which is going to get you ultimately 24 hours.
Brandon, obviously these microphones do not have an XLR connected.
They don't. And that is because we're actually using the Move Mic 2s right now. So if you are in the need of a set of lavalier mics, you should definitely check these out. And if you need just professional, high quality audio equipment, definitely check out Shure.
Shout out to you, Shure, for sponsoring this week's episode of Uncensored.
And that camera...
GFX 102.
GFX 102, sorry.
Mhm.
And so because of that camera,
Yeah,
and I've seen footage from that camera, that is a beautiful camera.
It's insane. Like,
It doesn't make sense, but it's a powerhouse of a camera.
yeah.
It is, and I think a lot of it has to do, one, with the sensor,
Uh-huh.
right? Like, we are working with a much
Mhm.
larger sensor. It is technically a medium format sensor, right? And we know that this sensor is going to be brought over into the Eterna.
Mhm.
We also know, because Fuji has already announced it, they are coming out with a new log profile
Mhm.
that is supposed to be better when it comes to like video, right? And so they're bringing that to the GFX 102. I believe that we can pretty much assume that that's also going to be coming over to this new Eterna. So it sounds like they are going to be focusing on maybe slightly tweaking some of the image processing in order to get even more out of the sensor.
Mhm.
So as somebody,
Yeah.
I know that Josh, I know that you've actually you own a GFX 100 Mark II, right? What has been your experience with that camera specifically?
Yeah, I use it for a lot of different things. I haven't really used it on a full production just yet. Funny enough, I use my XH2S more often than the GFX 102. Just because I have it built out to where I need it for that camera. But I do have to say too, like I know what everyone's kind of worried about, like the rolling shutter of this camera and this, that, and the other. And there's still a lot of just confusion around the GFX and the sensor in itself. People have to remember this is like you just said, Brandon, it is a massive sensor. And so it's technically classified as large format. Medium format is weird when it gets to those types of definitions and stuff in video, but large format is going to be larger than your full frame sensor, which is about 1.7 times larger than full frame. And so in order to, rolling shutter is going to be there because, I mean, I don't know all the technical aspects of it, but for instance, um, once you do crop into that sensor to go to VistaVision, to go to full frame, the rolling shutter improves drastically. It's like 20, if you're shooting in GF mode, which is the 8K mode, that has the most rolling shutter in it. That's going to give you, I think, 26 milliseconds or something like that, which is, in my opinion, for a large format, that's pretty fast. I don't know the numbers right off my head for the Alexa 65. I don't even know what that classifies for rolling shutter. But so yeah, so from my experience using that camera and using for video, I'm normally in the 4K mode or the VistaVision mode, which is the Premista mode. And the rolling shutter is kind of negligible because you have a steady you're on a tripod, or you're on a slider, or you're on these different things that you don't normally rock just handheld, just raw. It just depends on the shoot.
Yeah.
And so there's other ways to kind of come back to rolling shutter, but it's not going to be like it's not a to me it's not a deal breaker in that sense. Granted, I would love Fujifilm to push more into development of this, because the idea of just throwing the hybrid system into a production camera is okay, but then the question is, like, what's the price tag going to be? What are you going to improve some of the things that are like the shortcomings of this camera being hybrid? Because in this body is limited, in my opinion, just like any hybrid camera is.
Yeah.
And so since you're removing the still side of the camera and putting it into a production camera, what else can you beef up? And that's what I really want to see, happen. I don't know what they're gonna do. Like, everybody's still kind of in the dark about what's going on, what they're going to say moving forward. But
Yeah,
yeah.
there's definitely things with the camera that I feel like when I look at it, I'm like, this camera's not done.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, I mean, the design of the camera, when I looked at it, I was like, I think they're still trying to figure out what they're doing.
It's like a C400 FX6.
Yeah, but they've done things where like
Yeah.
they like the left side of the camera and the right side of the camera mirror. Like,
Yeah.
like you just need
They
an
mirror
optic
each other,
side.
yeah.
That's all you need. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And then other little things. Now, the one thing to sort of like answer the question that you were sort of talking about as far as like the readout. When you have a large sensor,
Mm-hmm.
processors are a thing,
Mm-hmm.
and heat dissipation is a thing.
Mm.
And so that processor can only read out from, top to bottom, because it's rolling shutters, not global,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's reading from top to bottom. It's a large sensor and a lot of data at 100 megapixels. Is that right?
Yeah, at least.
So
102 megapixels, which
102
is
megapixels. So it's like it's
not,
having to read all
it's
that
an
data out.
interesting move to keep it
It's-
that large.
It's going to take time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I'm very interested to see is that with a cinema camera build,
Mm-hmm.
can you dual process? You've got way more space for heat dissipation. You can put cooling in the camera. You can actually put fans in the camera to keep it cool. So I would imagine we would see faster readout speeds than we were seeing on the GFX 102. The other thing I like about this new design is it feels very reminiscent of like my Raptor, where you give a large VistaVision sensor
Mm-hmm.
that on my Raptor, in that case, it shoots at 8K. And then they say, okay, you want to drop down to 6K. You just drop down to 6K, and that crops into a Super 35 sensor.
Mm-hmm.
You're still getting the best part of the sensor because you're windowing in on the center of it, right? So you're still going to get a really sharp image. But now you're able to get faster readouts, probably higher frame rates. And you're being able to do that from a much larger sensor, which gives you more options.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you are worried about rolling shutter, go from the full sensor to VistaVision, to full frame.
Yeah.
Or if you're trying to do
and that's what
stuff, drop down into Super 35, maybe 6K, and now you're getting really fast readouts because there's literally less data for the actual processor to have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the area where
that's what's in the okay.
No, I was gonna say this is the area I'm the most concerned is I don't know if Fuji makes their own processors, but I don't know very many cameras that have to process this much information at once.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not even sure if processors are even out there to be able to handle a camera or a sensor of this type.
So right now the processor that they announced is the same processor in the 100 Mark II, which is the what did he call it? Processor 5 or something like that. So that X-Trend 5. And so yeah, what you were just saying about when you window down into the sensor, that's essentially what the GFX 102 does. Once you want to get the permissive VistaVision or full frame, it doesn't go anything below full frame. So you're going to the readout speed improves drastically once you go down to those bits. The 8K feature on that camera, which they're going to most likely bring over to the Eterna, that has the worst readout speed, and that has the heaviest crop as well, which is interesting. It's the heaviest crop in that camera, and it's the worst readout speed at 8K, which is interesting. But the 4K DCI on the camera is the full width of the sensor, and a
Mhm.
lot of people think there's open gate in this camera. There's no open gate in this camera. There's variations of uh, uh, a 3:2 aspect ratio, but that's relative of full frame. But
Gotcha.
the full width and the height you will never get in the camera.
Mm.
Well, I would imagine most lenses could, like most cinema lenses wouldn't even be able to capture that full size, like especially if you went to the full height of that sensor, you would just get tons of vignetting. Because this sensor is, I mean, most lenses, sorry, are, even the full frame ones, they can actually capture a little bit wider than full frame. They get to, like, this
Hmm.
size, which, like the Raptor, for example, that sensor is actually a little bit larger than when it's fully open. It's actually a little bit larger than. But like a lot of people are like, oh, well, why doesn't the Raptor have like open gate or something like that? And that's just because, like, it's already such a big sensor. If you were to actually go a little bit taller, you would
Yeah.
just start seeing just a bunch of vignetting on most lenses. Now I know Fuji has like it's the G mount on this camera, and they're saying they're bringing that same G mount over to the Eterna. So as far as
Yeah.
your experience when it comes to using the G mount and the lenses that Fuji makes, because there's not a lot of medium format lenses that are just out there.
Mhm.
How has
Hmm.
that experience
Hmm.
fairly easy adapting it to different, like whether that's going to PL or using other lenses out there?
Yeah, right now there's only two options you have: using native glass or using the PL. I use PL. Man, I sound like I'm dying right now. This is crazy. I use PL lenses and a PL mount for my GF 102. And right now there's only a few manufacturers that make native GF mount lenses. Nisi makes them, of course, Fujifilm, and there's like another Chinese company that did it. So I don't know what, like, that's gonna be interesting to see if they're gonna make more cinema focused lenses for this mount. It'd be amazing if oops. Wow, that was fun.
All good.
Am I still there?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
It'll be amazing if Fujinon, their lens company, if they made primes for this sensor, or just VistaVision primes in general. Like they have all the zooms, they're known for zooms and whatnot. That's why they made the 32. They're making a 32 to 90 power zoom for this camera. Um, but yeah, in terms of lenses, like a lot of lenses now today cover VistaVision, or you just go into the full frame mode and you could use your full frame glass. Or you go a little bit back, the Mamiya 645, those are very popular lenses to use for cameras like this, which I love. I used to own a set. So yeah, they cover that sensor.
All right, so if you enjoyed this clip, do us a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button because we would love for you to join the community. Here, we're just a bunch of nerds who love camera gear and love talking about it every single week, which we do live at 11 o'clock Central Standard Time. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss that and you don't miss any of the other clips.